Leo went to help the female neighbor fix her plumbing. 3 hours passed, and he still hadn't returned. I knocked on the door and was greeted by the neighbor, dressed loosely in her pajamas, her chest barely covered. My husband stood shirtless, holding her 3-year-old son. The boy called him, "Daddy, I want to sleep with you." Leo smiled and tickled the boy, making him giggle. The neighbor awkwardly explained, "He's still young. He doesn't know better." I shook my head. The one who doesn't know better is me. Sorry for interrupting. Please, continue your fun. Chapter 1. I hesitated for a moment at the door but decided to knock. Olivia opened the door, and given my height, my gaze landed right at her neckline. Her loosely tied pajamas fell into a deep V shape from her neck down. Her hair was still wet, and she held a towel in one hand. A woman's intuition told me she did this on purpose. If it weren't me knocking, she wouldn't have opened the door dressed like that. A mischievous glint appeared in the corner of her eyes. "Leo, Anna's here to see you." Leo, shirtless, quickly stubbed out his cigarette. He gave me a guilty glance. After all, he was supposed to be quitting smoking. Olivia's 3-year-old son, Oscar, sat on his lap, clinging to his neck. "Daddy, you're leaving once you stop smoking, right?" "No way. Today I want to sleep with you." His childish voice was soft, but those words struck me clearly, like burning coals rolling around in my heart. Leo didn't show the slightest panic. He lowered his head, smiling as he tickled Oscar, who giggled loudly. He didn't even glance my way. "Go home first. I'll be back later." No explanation. Instead, Olivia gave an awkward smile. "The child's young. He doesn't understand. Don't take it to heart." She was asking me not to mind, which meant she wasn't planning to correct him. Kids don't lie. Clearly, Leo always leaves after smoking here. His father died of liver cancer, and I had been telling him to quit smoking for a long time. It wasn't until the last 6 months, when we started planning for a baby, that he finally cut back. Turns out, it was all lies. Seeing me stand there without moving, Leo frowned. "Go home first. Her faucet still needs fixing." "What kind of faucet takes 3 hours to fix?" He left halfway through dinner to answer a call. "And now this?" Seeing Olivia casually hand him a towel, I finally understood. My tone wasn't exactly polite, given I was holding back the urge to blow up. "Let me see how it's fixed. I'd like to learn too." Chapter 2. Leo noticed my displeasure and put away his smile. Setting the child aside, he stood up and headed toward the bathroom, with Olivia closely following him. I watched as he bent down to twist the water valve, occasionally asking for tools, which Olivia quickly handed him. I felt like the outsider from the moment I stepped through the door. Olivia complimented him. "It's a good thing Leo is here to help. There's nothing he can't do." Always so eager to help, always at her beck and call. For me, Leo's standard response is always, "Just a minute." No matter how urgent or important my requests were, that's the only thing I would hear from him. "Just a minute." When I had a fever and lay in bed, asking him to bring me a glass of water, he would glance at his game. "Just a minute." One game ended, then another began, until I finally got out of bed to fetch the water myself. He barely raised an eyebrow. "Are you mad again?" But for others, he's ever so diligent. It's been a year since Olivia moved in with her child. I didn't even know when they became close enough to exchange phone numbers and WeChat. One day, I was making braised pork and asked him to go downstairs and get a bottle of soy sauce. He told me, "Just a minute. I need to go pick up a kid first." That minute stretched into the entire night, and he didn't return until he had eaten and drank his fill. I stood alone in front of a pot of cold meat soup, watching him scratch his head awkwardly. "I forgot. Should I order some takeout for you?" Today was the same. He said he wanted duck soup. I made it after work, and he barely had a couple of sips before Olivia called. And off he went. Leo straightened up, and Olivia reached out to turn the faucet. "Hey, wait." "Ah." Caught off guard. Water sprayed everywhere. Without thinking, Olivia buried herself in Leo's chest. He held her with one hand, while his other arm reached out in front of me. I wiped the water off my face, and suddenly, everything became clear. Olivia seemed to only realize then that something was wrong and sheepishly stepped back. Anna, I'm sorry. That was thoughtless of me. I shook my head. The one who's thoughtless is me. Sorry for interrupting. Please, continue your fun. Chapter 3. In that cramped bathroom. They managed to turn it into quite the spectacle. No wonder it took so long to fix the pipes. Leo's face darkened. What are you saying? I waved him off and walked out. The suffocating air in that small space made me feel like I was about to explode. In the living room, Oscar was using tissues to wipe up cigarette ash from the table. Every now and then, he glared at me, his little face full of hostility. Children learn what they're taught. Olivia had clearly put in the effort. Leo and I got married right after we graduated. At the time, his father was gravely ill and said his dying wish was to see his son settle down and start a family. The wedding was rushed. I didn't even have the chance to get anything new from head to toe. He used to look at me with guilt in his eyes. One day, we'll have a grand wedding to make up for everything you missed. I teased him. Another wedding? How many do you plan on having? He replied, it'll always be with you, no matter how many times. What's there to worry about? Back then, he was confident and full of spirit. Even when the backbone of his family fell, he remained steady, giving me peace of mind. I only had my widowed mother. So after we married, both our families relied on him to make decisions. After repeatedly hitting walls in the job market and experiencing the workplace's constant scheming, his sharp edges seemed to dull, and he became lethargic. He found contentment in collecting rent, knocking on tenants' doors and watching them act cautiously around him. But after a while, everyone in the building came to know him as someone with a warm heart. Back then, when someone asked for his help, he would always prioritize me first. Let me drop my wife off at work, and then I'll take a look. Over time, he started frowning at me and saying, just a minute. Those 3 words have defined most of my marriage. Now, Olivia's in the picture. Looks like I'll be waiting a lot longer than just a minute. Chapter 4. Leo came back half an hour later than I did, humming an off-key tune. He turned on the living room light. When he suddenly noticed me sitting on the sofa, he seemed startled. Anna, you're still up? I glanced at him and got up to head to the bedroom, about to sleep. A few minutes later, I heard the door of the small bedroom next door close. Lying on my pillow, I couldn't fall asleep. The suffocating feeling inside me was only growing stronger. I thought about when we first got married. Leo used to have mild OCD. He was a man of principles. Someone who acted as if he measured everything with a ruler. Before bed, he'd make sure all the dishes were washed and the house was tidy. When I left for work, he'd rub his sleepy eyes but still get up to see me off. Now, as long as it's not during my ovulation period, he'd rather sleep in the guest room. You make too much noise in the morning. Once I wake up, it's hard for me to fall back asleep. I couldn't bring myself to ask, what happened to the guy who used to get up to take me to work? In just 5 short years, his OCD and principles seemed to have vanished. If the oil bottle tipped over, he'd just tell me, just a minute. I stayed awake until dawn, dragging my exhausted body to wash up. There was a new cashier at the company today, and I had to train them. No chance to take a day off. When I reached the living room, I was surprised to see Leo sitting at the table eating a sandwich. I frowned. That was the breakfast I bought yesterday. He shoved the last piece into his mouth and wiped his lips with the back of his hand. I'm running late. You can grab something else later. He grabbed his car keys and headed out. I couldn't stop myself from calling after him. You're taking the car? How am I supposed to get to work? Without turning around, he replied, just take a cab. I'm dropping Oscar off at kindergarten. In that instant, all the blood in my body rushed to my head. I slowly walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Leo and Olivia were each holding one of Oscar's hands. From behind, they looked like a picture-perfect family. At that moment, I knew our relationship had truly come to an end. Chapter 5. The entire morning, Leo seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. During a break, I went to speak with my supervisor, Daniel. He had been stressing over the vacancy in the finance department at our branch office for a while. When he found out I was willing to transfer, Daniel was so happy that he said he'd treat me to a big meal. But then he paused. looking confused. Didn't Leo say you two were in a hurry to have a baby? With you two living apart, he might not agree to this, right? Daniel was our senior back in school and had witnessed us go from college sweethearts to married, to outsiders. We were the perfect example of a couple who maintained the beauty of love. But that beauty had already shattered. We're not having a baby anymore. We're getting a divorce. Daniel's jaw dropped in shock, seeing me avoid his gaze. He didn't dare ask more. By lunchtime, I absent-mindedly scrolled through my social media feed. Leo had posted several updates, but within minutes, he deleted them. He hadn't gone to the kindergarten. He and Olivia had taken Oscar to an amusement park. In the photos, Oscar was sitting on Leo's shoulders, laughing joyfully. It was obvious who had taken the pictures. A sharp pain pierced my chest, and I found myself staring blankly into space. I didn't even realize when Daniel sat down across from me. He asked cautiously, "Is there someone else?" I forced a bitter smile. He must have seen the posts too. A heart doesn't freeze all at once. It felt like the moment Olivia opened that door, mine had turned to ice. It doesn't matter anymore. Maybe he's just eager to become someone's stepdad. I pulled out my phone and sent Leo a message. My fingers trembled slightly, betraying the calmness I was trying to maintain in my heart. "Once you're done babysitting, please come back so we can get a divorce." He replied quickly, "Just a minute, I'm almost at your office building." Chapter 6. His "just a minute" was long enough for me to have a lawyer draft the divorce papers. I signed them and took them to the cafe downstairs. From a distance, I saw Leo holding a tray, bending over to wipe Oscar's face. Olivia, who was sitting with her back to me, turned around and stood up in a panic. "Anna." Leo looked over at me too, his movements and expression a bit awkward. Forcing a smile, he waved. "Want to grab a drink?" I steadied myself as I walked over and put the divorce agreement down in front of him. Finish eating and drinking, then sign the divorce papers. And also, even though I tried my best to contain it, I couldn't suppress the anger swelling inside me. "Leo, it's bad enough that you make me sick at home, but bringing them to where I work, to rub it in my face?" I could feel the heat behind my eyes. I kept telling myself, "He's not worth it. Don't cry." How could someone as thoughtful as him not understand how I feel? There were plenty of our former classmates working at the company. Did he think I didn't care about my reputation? He stood there, dumbfounded. "What divorce?" My face turned completely cold as I turned to leave. By now, several of my colleagues passing by had started to look over. Oscar kept calling Leo Daddy. Many people had seen Leo picking me up from work or visiting me, but that one word, Daddy, was enough to make all the gazes on me turn curious and suspicious. The moment I turned around, tears began to fall. A swirl of emotions, grief, anger, and confusion boiled in my chest. That's when Leo hurriedly caught up to me in a few quick strides and grabbed my arm. "You sent me a message? Why do you want a divorce?" His sudden grip made me stumble, and my emotions, bottled up for so long, finally found their outlet. In that split second, I swung around with all the strength I could muster, slapping him hard across the face. The sound was loud and crisp. "You disgust me. Do you really enjoy playing daddy that much?" Chapter 7. It was only then that Leo saw the message. He stood there, stunned, holding his face, looking at me in disbelief. All of this, just because of a 3-year-old kid? He doesn't know any better. And neither do you? He let out a bitter laugh, his finger trembling as he pointed at me. "Anna, you're being completely unreasonable right now. Why are you competing with a child? Come on, let's go home and talk." He tried to grab me, but I pulled away, my face cold. I wiped my face harshly. "There's nothing left for us to talk about." I turned to walk toward the elevator. This time, Olivia was the one rushing after me. She started explaining, her voice full of apology. "Anna, please don't blame Leo. It's all my fault. My child's never had a father, and I just wanted him to feel the joy of being taken to an amusement park by a dad. I didn't think it through." She tried to grab my arm a few times, touching it briefly but pulling back each time. By the time we reached the elevator, she was sobbing. "We're just a helpless mother and child. Anna, please have pity on me." Her crying only worsened the frustration already swirling inside me. I had always been restrained and polite, afraid that any lapse in decorum would make people laugh at my mom for raising me alone. But hearing the words helpless mother and child coming from her just felt like an insult. I looked her over from head to toe, ignoring her now smudged makeup. It was clear she had dressed up carefully, her every movement carrying a kind of delicate charm. Was she putting on this act for Leo? I scoffed and reminded her, "You being a helpless mother and child has nothing to do with me, so stop trying to guilt-trip me. As for you, wearing your pajamas every night and calling a married man to fix this and that, your intentions are pretty clear." Just before the elevator doors closed, I let my face fall completely. "And don't call me sister. You're 2 years older than me. Stop pretending to be younger." Chapter 8. The commotion at the cafe had already spread through the company. As I hurried down the hallway, it felt like everyone was secretly watching me. When I finally got back to my desk, Daniel was already waiting for me. It was clear he felt awkward, curious to hear the gossip but unsure if I was still upset. After a long pause, he finally managed to say, "The transfer got approved." That meant I could book a flight and start my new position anytime. I began packing up my things. "Thanks. I'll treat you to a meal sometime." Daniel couldn't resist and asked, "A secret child?" "No way." I inwardly scoffed. If that were true, I'd have to admit Leo was truly something. I took the afternoon off and hailed a taxi to head home. During the ride, my phone buzzed nonstop. Leo, with his constant just a minute replies, was now bombarding me with messages and calls. I had never seen him so frantic. Or maybe it was anger, because even now, he still acted as if he had every right to be upset. Mixed in with Leo's calls were ones from my mom and his mother. I ignored them all. If I answered even one, the others would be unable to get through, and I would be bombarded with accusations, especially from Leo's mother, who would always, without fail, stand by her son's side. I had barely been home for a few minutes when Leo stormed in, fuming. "Why didn't you answer my calls? You didn't even pick up for my mom?" I stared at him coldly as he used his height to tower over me. Glaring, he used to feel like a giant tree, making me feel safe. Now, his aggressive stance only deepened the disgust I felt toward him. Maybe it was the unfamiliar look in my eyes, but he quickly grabbed my shoulders with both hands. "Anna, we can talk about anything. Why won't you say anything?" I spoke slowly and clearly. "Sign the divorce papers, then we'll talk." Chapter 9. He suddenly deflated like a punctured balloon, slumping into a chair. A confused expression crossed his face. "There's gotta be a reason for the divorce, right?" He explained that he didn't tell me about taking Oscar to the amusement park because he didn't want me to overthink it. And posting on social media doesn't mean anything. I just wanted to mark the occasion, even though I had already made up my mind to divorce him. Hearing his excuses still sent a chill through my entire body. He probably meant to block me from seeing the post but got too excited and forgot, which is why he hurried to delete it. After his explanation, his tone softened a bit, and he moved closer to me. "All right, look, I've explained everything. Don't be mad anymore." I glanced at him with a wry smile. "So, you were afraid I'd get upset, and that's why you didn't say anything?" He nodded repeatedly, his expression relaxing considerably. "Leo, you knew this would bother me, and yet you went ahead and did it anyway, right? Can I interpret it that way?" His recently relaxed face tensed again, his brows furrowing. "Are you seriously not over this? Trying to scare me with a divorce?" He suddenly stood up. "Anna, I hate it when people try to threaten me. Don't come crying to me when I sign the papers and you regret it. You'll see." I stared at him, unflinching. "If you're a real man, sign the damn papers and stop talking nonsense." He looked at me in stunned silence. In all the years we'd been together, he had never heard me speak like that. He was shaking slightly with anger. "You really want to push this, huh?" In 3 quick steps, he stormed into the other room, grabbed a pen, and slammed the divorce papers he'd brought back down onto the table. He signed them quickly, then threw the papers and the pen at me. "Happy now?" I picked them up and checked. "Good, for once. You're acting like a man." Chapter 10. Leo slumped back into the chair. "Can we talk now?" He put on the air of someone ready to reason with me, to lay out the facts. I used to think he was logical, more meticulous than I was. But now, with the rose-colored glasses shattered, even the sound of his voice annoyed me. I couldn't help but think about how he would smile and sweet-talk Olivia's child. And now here he was, trying to act all serious with me. You signed the papers. So tell me, what's this really about? It was hard to hold back a laugh. I don't love you anymore, that's what. He froze, dumbstruck. After a long pause, he muttered, Anna, don't give me that nonsense. The doorbell rang just then, and I got up to answer it. Zhao, my lawyer, followed me in, talking as he entered. I reviewed the rental contract you gave me. It was only short-term, and there was no renewal. You can ask them to vacate at any time. Leo's expression grew sharp, and he turned to me. What rental contract? Olivia had been staying in a one-bedroom apartment, initially rented for just a month. If it weren't for all this mess, I wouldn't have even thought to check the contract. I told him, I'm having her move out immediately. Leo shot up from his seat. Anna, could you be any more unreasonable? He rubbed his temples in frustration, pointing at me, and scolding. They're a struggling mother and child. Can't you leave her out of our issues? Oscar just started kindergarten nearby. If you make them move, how's he supposed to get to school? I almost laughed. He knew every little detail about these people who were complete strangers to him, and he was quick to sympathize and consider their needs. But what about me? His own wife, his partner in life, and he still hadn't noticed a thing about how I was feeling. That's not my problem. If she ends up sleeping on the street, that's on her. Leo's face turned pale with anger. I won't allow it. You wouldn't dare. This time, I really did laugh out loud. Leo, have you forgotten? The dozen or so rental properties you collect from each month are from my mother, right? Did you really think you became a landlord? Chapter 11. Leo's face turned deathly pale, frozen in place like a statue. I asked the lawyer to personally inform Olivia that the rental contract had been terminated and that she had 3 days to move out. Once the lawyer left, Leo suddenly rushed over and grabbed me by the shoulders. His eyes were bloodshot, and his jaw clenched tightly. Anna, do you really have to make things this difficult? If you handle things like this, how am I supposed to show my face in front of them? It took me a second to realize that by them, he meant the neighbors and tenants who always spoke highly of him. Leo, you won't be living here anymore. There's no need to worry about showing your face. I feared he might forget, so I poked him in the chest with my finger, emphasizing each word. You've signed the divorce papers. You have no right to live here. Don't forget that in a month, we'll be officially divorced. I pushed him away and strode toward the bedroom with purpose. I'm going to take a nap. When I wake up, I expect you to have packed your things and left. When we first got married, Leo and I had nothing. We had 2 choices, move in with his mother or rent a place of our own. But my mother, without a second thought, offered us one of her empty apartments. Not long after the wedding, my mom had an accident and injured herself, so I took over collecting the rent. But with my full-time job, it became too much. That's when Leo, who had just quit his job, stepped in. He was meticulous and handled everything. And eventually, my mom left all the responsibility to him. Since Leo couldn't find a suitable job after that, managing the rentals became his permanent role. My mom, always looking out for me, made sure to leave Leo a generous cut of the rent money. In the past couple of years, Leo never brought it up, and my mom didn't bother asking either. But now wasn't the time for him to take advantage of our generosity any longer. Chapter 12. I had one of the most peaceful naps, waking up to find that night had already fallen. The living room lights were on, and Leo was still sitting on the sofa. The faint smell of food wafted from the kitchen. I frowned. The good mood I had from my restful sleep was beginning to fade. Why are you still here? He looked at me as if coming out of a trance, then got up and walked to the kitchen. Wash your hands and get ready for dinner. I made your favorite, black bean spare ribs. He brought out the rice, set the table with the utensils, and sat down across from me, helping himself. This scene, back when we first got married, was once our everyday routine. Leo, who hadn't known how to cook, had learned many dishes for me, but his mother wasn't pleased about that. I'm old now and never got to enjoy a meal my son cooked. She'd complain. After his father passed away, Leo's mother became even more dependent on him. She never liked me, and I knew it. She wanted a daughter-in-law who would treat her son like the center of the universe, cooking and cleaning all day, even if she had a full-time job. But it had been a long time since Leo had made me a meal. I watched as he silently took a bite, chewing slowly. I spoke up, my voice calm but firm. "Are you moving out after dinner?" He froze mid-chew, and it took him a while to force the food down. His gaze turned dark, a hint of resentment in his eyes. "I don't agree to the divorce. Don't even think about it." I smiled, my tone icy. "Can't part with my mom's house?" He slammed his chopsticks down, stormed into the room, and came back with a noisy bunch of keys, tossing them in front of me. "Here, take them. I'll find a job tomorrow. But I'm not signing those divorce papers." "But Leo," I said softly, "I don't love you anymore." His once angry eyes shifted, now filled with a flicker of panic. Chapter 13. That night, I could hear Leo tossing and turning in the small bedroom. His phone kept buzzing. I figured Olivia must have been messaging him, still hoping he would play the role of her savior. I called my mom from the bedroom. When I told her I had signed the divorce papers, she stayed silent for a long time. "Is there no chance of reconciliation?" she finally asked. "No, none." My mom paused again. "Then follow your heart." The next morning, as I was getting ready to leave for work, Leo opened the door and came out. "I'll drive you," he offered. He grabbed his coat and changed his shoes. "And we can grab breakfast on the way." "Whatever you feel like." I stopped in my tracks. "There's no need. My colleagues already know about the divorce. I don't want to give anyone the wrong idea." He paused while tying his shoes but quickly stood up again. "Let's go. I'll take you." I braced myself as we walked side by side to the elevator. Just then, Olivia came over, holding Oscar, her eyes swollen from crying. The moment she saw Leo, her face lit up. "Leo, about the house." She glanced at me, her eyes flicking nervously. "I haven't found a better place yet. And since you're renting it out anyway." Leo stayed silent. Olivia awkwardly lowered her head, looking embarrassed. Oscar, still half asleep, rubbed his eyes and suddenly reached out toward Leo. "Daddy, carry me." Leo flinched like he'd been shocked, taking 2 quick steps away. His voice was cold when he spoke. "Call me uncle. The kid's getting older. You should start correcting him before people get the wrong idea." Olivia's face turned deathly pale, and her smile was forced. Yes. My fault for not paying attention to that." The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside first. Leo followed right behind. Olivia stood frozen, holding Oscar. I pressed the floor button. "Are you coming?" She hesitated for a moment, then finally stepped in. Oscar called out again. "Daddy, take me. I want to ride in the car." Leo's face was dark, his expression like thunder. Chapter 14. As I sat in the car, Oscar was still crying, insisting he wanted to ride along. I rolled down the window and sighed. "Get in. We'll drop you off since it's on the way." Leo hesitated for a moment, but Oscar had already run over to the car. Once we were on the road, Olivia quietly thanked me. I gave a cold laugh. "It doesn't matter. This car's being sold in a few days anyway." "Sold?" Olivia sounded shocked. "Yeah. After all, with every stray cat and dog riding in it. I find it filthy." The atmosphere in the car immediately froze. When we reached the kindergarten, Olivia quickly walked away with Oscar without looking back. It wasn't until Leo dropped me off at my office building that he finally spoke. "There's really nothing between me and her. Please, don't overthink this." I figured he had spent the whole drive trying to figure out why I was suddenly so determined to divorce him. She might have been the spark, but I really just don't love you anymore. He paused for a moment. "Maybe it's because we've been together so long. Marriage isn't like dating. There's less passion, less romance. Life after marriage just doesn't stay exciting. You know?" He said it was my expectations that had changed. "But isn't that how every marriage is?" I looked at him. "But I'm tired of your constant 'just a minute.' I'm done waiting. Your games, You're helping others, do whatever you want from now on. He quickly tried to defend himself. I wasn't ignoring you, Anna. You only see my faults. But what about you? Where's the kind, caring woman you used to be? He said I'd grown quick to anger. Like now, he couldn't fathom how things had escalated to the point of divorce. Leo, don't act like you don't know what Olivia's intentions are. His flood of words came to a sudden halt at that. Chapter 15. The revealing nightgowns, the seemingly casual touches, the frequent phone calls, and the always broken appliances. Leo wasn't stupid. How could he not see what was going on? Soon, I transferred to the branch office. On the day I left, my mom came to see me off. At the airport, she rubbed her reddened eyes. Come home on the weekends. Book your ticket early. I'll make dumplings for you. Don't try to save money. I knew she had been under a lot of stress lately. When Leo's mother couldn't reach me, she constantly called my mom instead. Even now, her phone was buzzing with another call from Leo's mother. The phone in my mom's pocket blinked, and I reached out my hand. Let me talk to her. But my mom gently held my hand, shaking her head. You deal with you and Leo. She's unreasonable. Why bother with her? Still, I insisted on answering, not realizing it was me. Leo's mother immediately began yelling. Let me tell you something. Don't think you can just kick my son out like that. He spent years supporting that widow and child. Couldn't even find a job. Working himself to the bone for your family. And now, he's the one at fault? She went on to demand that if we were going to divorce, a few of the houses should be transferred to Leo. How could your mother and son be so greedy? Listening to her outrageous rant, I lost all patience. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll sue. And about my mom's house? You're old enough. Can you stop dreaming and wake up? I hung up and immediately blocked her number. If she calls again, don't pick up. Chapter 16. Olivia dragged out her move until the third day, reluctantly leaving the building. None of the neighbors helped her. In fact, some were more than happy to watch the scene unfold, even sending me videos. She had rented a small tricycle and made trip after trip, hauling down plastic bags. One of the neighbors called me. She went knocking door to door, asking if anyone could help her move. Said it was hard with a child. No one wanted to lend a hand. Word spread around that she always asks for help from households with men. You have to wonder what her real intentions are. Of course, she went to ask Leo for help too, but the door was locked. My mom had made sure of that. The day I left, she had him pack his things and move out. I doubt my mom said anything too harsh. But still, I received a message from Leo. Mom said she misjudged me. Anna, I think I really made mistakes. At the time, I was sitting in the cafeteria of the branch office, eating lunch. Every word in his message was like a thorn. Such a smart person, and yet he was still playing dumb with me. I heard he moved back in with his mother. It seemed like he was trying to get his life together. Even started looking for a job, though he kept getting rejected. He constantly texted me, detailing every mundane part of his day. The company that had interviewed him seemed interested, but days passed, and he never got the job offer. He even swallowed his pride and reached out to Daniel. Daniel promised to keep an eye out for any suitable positions, but he said it would take time. What Leo didn't know was that Daniel had immediately called me to give me a heads up. I asked him, "Why did you two get divorced?" You know what he said? He told me it's just a phase you're going through, and that only he can tolerate it. He figures you'll be back in no time because you can't live without your family. I chuckled as Daniel recounted his rant. Can you believe this guy? Then he asked me if he could transfer to the branch if you came back. He's got a foreign trade degree. What does he think he can do in finance? Chapter 17. The 1-month cooling off period had passed. Before booking my flight back, I made sure to notify Leo. He was silent for a long time before asking, "Have you thought this through? You really want a divorce?" After I confirmed, he gritted his teeth. Fine, I agree. The process of finalizing the divorce went smoothly, so smoothly. It surprised me. He had dressed up in a suit, looking sharp, and had even styled his hair. As we walked out of the office, he hesitated, struggling to find the right words. Anna, you wanted the divorce, and I agreed, but I still love you. So what? I stopped and turned to face him. Am I supposed to give you a prize for that? He choked on his words, loosening his tie with frustration. I told you, no matter how many times I marry, it will always be you. So, sooner or later, I'll win you back. Foolish dreams. I didn't mind being the one to wake him up from them. Leo, I loved you because you were considerate, handsome, and treated me well. What do you have now that would make me love you? Even the most attentive lover becomes indifferent and resentful over time, worn down by life. I had already experienced that with him. I didn't want to go through it again. He followed me for a few steps. Anna, I haven't changed. I admit I wasn't as attentive after we got married. But now that I realize it, I'll change. Don't bother. I watched as he irritably pulled a cigarette from his pocket and lit it. After taking a couple of deep drags, he met my gaze and sheepishly lowered his hand. In Olivia's house, there was always an ashtray. Oscar even knew where to grab his cigarettes for him. Meanwhile, I had foolishly spent my time every day researching how to get pregnant. Leo, let's not see each other again. I reminded him not to let his mother harass me or my mom anymore. My mom is old, considering how much she cared for you these past few years. Don't forget your basic decency. Chapter 18. I returned to the branch office, and my mom resumed her role as a landlady. On the weekend, when I visited her, she proudly pulled out a few shopping bags and laid them in front of me. You're still so young, but look at you, dressing like a nun. The bright, flashy dresses made my scalp tingle. Without thinking, I blurted out, Mom, I just got divorced. Please don't start pushing me into blind dates. She widened her eyes at me. Don't talk nonsense. I'm not pushing you into anything. She said she would be more than happy if I stayed with her for a few more years. Getting married right after graduation had been too rushed. It had been rushed to the point that now, even after the divorce, Leo and I didn't have a proper wedding photo to remember. While shopping with my mom at the mall, a small child clung to her leg, refusing to let go. Grandma, buy a flower, please. The little voice melted my mom's heart instantly. She smiled, about to pull out some money, but I stopped her. Looking into the boy's eyes, I realized he recognized me. Bad lady, you stole my dad. Oscar's tiny fists started pounding on my leg, and my mom hurried to pull him off. What's going on? Whose child is this? The mall security arrived, which forced Olivia, hiding nearby, to reluctantly come out. I crossed my arms, amused, as I looked at her familiar face. Huh? She awkwardly scooped up Oscar. He's just a kid, doesn't know any better. He mistook you for someone else. My mom, still confused, asked, Who is this? I leaned over and whispered a few words in her ear. Her face immediately darkened. Bad influence from the top, of course. The child will turn out like this. She grabbed my arm, ready to leave. But Olivia, holding Oscar, chased after us. How many times do I have to explain? There's nothing between me and Leo. You two couldn't make your marriage work. So why am I the one taking the blame? She actually looked upset. His mother even came to my place and yelled at me. And now the neighbors gossip about me. I have no home, no income. I'm living in the train station with my child. I stopped in my tracks. Isn't that what you deserve? By the way, you still owe me over 6 months' rent. Chapter 19. If she hadn't mentioned it, I would have almost forgotten. Back then, I was solely focused on getting her out, so I didn't even bother following up. What? Now you want my sympathy? You think I'll let you live rent-free again? I reached out and covered Oscar's ears. Olivia, I know this kid of yours was born from breaking up someone else's family. She had been chased out of her hometown by the wife of the man she had an affair with. That man had promised her money, but the moment she left, he deleted and blocked her, even moved houses. You're a repeat offender. Huh? Why do you always go after men with families? I pulled out a piece of paper, scribbled an address on it, and handed it to her. You keep calling him Brother Leo. Well, here's his address. Take your kid and try your luck. And she actually did. The moment the door opened, Oscar ran straight into Leo's arms. Daddy, do you not want me anymore? As soon as he saw Leo's mom, He called her grandma. The scene was like something out of a tearful family reunion show. Leo's family lived in an old building with thin walls, and all the neighbors knew each other. Soon, heads were popping out of doorways, curious to see what was happening. Everyone knew Leo had gotten divorced, but no one knew the real reason. When people asked, Leo's mom would tear up and start blaming me for everything. Now, with the truth out in the open, the neighbors were laughing their heads off. Some even leaned against their doors with their dinner bowls in hand, enjoying the show. Wow, Leo, your kid's already that big? Chapter 20. The next time Leo came looking for me, he was dragging a suitcase behind him. He looked exhausted, standing among the crowd outside my office building. I almost didn't recognize him. He called out to me, "Anna." I frowned. "I told you. I don't want to see you again." He hung his head in embarrassment. "I had a fight with my mom. I don't have anywhere to go." He said he was planning to find a job in this area. "I could drive you to and from work, cook for you when you have time. We could go on dates, maybe see a movie." But his words were cut short by my colleague walking up behind me. "Anna, the movie's about to start." I turned to leave, and Leo tried to reach for me, but his hand came up empty. "Anna." His voice gradually faded as I walked away without looking back once. Later, he really did find a job, though it was far from the branch office. The next time I saw him was a few years later, at a high-speed train station. The person in front of me was hunched over, struggling to lift a fallen suitcase. I helped without thinking, and as he turned to thank me, our eyes met. Leo froze in place. He was thin, his cheeks hollowed. He forced a bitter smile. "I should have listened to you about quitting smoking." Inside, I didn't feel even the slightest ripple of emotion. "What illness?" I asked, tilting my head. He hesitated, then muttered, "Late-stage lung cancer." I looked at him calmly. "Is it treatable?" "No, I can't afford it." I nodded. "Okay, no need to notify me about the funeral." I didn't even have his number anymore. I wouldn't be able to light a candle for him on social media. 6 months later, at his funeral, my mom still sent a wreath. Daniel, who attended, came back to give us the details. A woman brought a kid to pay respects, but Leo's mom dragged her by the hair across the place, slapped her face until it was swollen, really went at it, tore her clothes to shreds. Daniel continued. Leo's mom kept screaming that if it weren't for her, Leo wouldn't have died so early. I figured it was Olivia. She's no stranger to getting kicked out. She's probably an expert by now.